If you had asked me who I trusted most in the world, I would have given you two names: my wife and my best friend. That's why this story still feels unreal, even now. I met Mark before I met her. We were friends for years before I even thought about marriage. We grew up together in a way people rarely do anymore. Same neighborhood, same stupid mistakes, same late-night conversations about who we wanted to be. Mark was family, not by blood, by choice. When I met my wife, Mark was the first person I told. He was the first to meet her, the first to approve, the first to say, "She's good for you." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Our lives slowly intertwined. Dinners together, birthdays, vacations. Mark was always there. He stood next to me at my wedding, smiled in every photo, raised a glass, and called me his brother. I never questioned that word. My marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real. We argued sometimes. We disagreed. We got tired. But we always came back to each other. Or at least, I thought we did. Mark was around so often that I stopped noticing him. That sounds strange, but it's true. When someone is always present, they fade into the background. They become safe, familiar, invisible. The first change was subtle. My wife started mentioning Mark more often, not in a suspicious way. Casual comments. "Mark said something funny today. Mark thinks you worry too much." Mark agrees with me. I didn't mind. I trusted both of them completely. Sometimes the three of us would sit together, and I'd feel like the odd one out. They laughed easily, finished each other's sentences. I told myself it was nothing. They'd known each other for years now. Of course they were comfortable. Mark started coming over when I wasn't home. He worked flexible hours. I didn't. Sometimes I'd come back and find them in the kitchen, talking, relaxed. She'd smile and say, "Mark stopped by." I'd smile back. There were moments I didn't register until much later. Small things. How she dressed when he was coming over, how she checked her phone more often, how Mark avoided my eyes sometimes. Nothing obvious. Nothing I could accuse. And that's what makes betrayal grow. Mark knew everything about my marriage, the good and the bad. I talked to him when I was frustrated, when I felt misunderstood, when I needed perspective. He listened. He always listened. I didn't realize I was handing him pieces of my life. One night, after a small argument with my wife, I went to Mark's place. We drank, talked, laughed. I told him I felt distant from her lately. He nodded, said relationships go through phases, said I should be patient. I trusted his advice. When I came home, my wife was quieter than usual. She asked how Mark was doing. I told her he was fine. She smiled. That smile means something different to me now. The first time I felt something was wrong wasn't dramatic. It was silence, the kind that feels intentional. They would stop talking when I entered the room, not suddenly, just gently, like they were careful. I asked my wife once if everything was okay. She said yes. She always said yes. Mark started canceling plans with me. Said he was busy, tired, overworked, but he still found time to come over. When I wasn't there, I noticed my wife becoming more distant, less affectionate, less present. I blamed stress, routine, life. I never blamed them. That's the cruel irony. There was a night I'll never forget. The three of us were sitting on the couch, watching something neither of us was paying attention to. She leaned slightly toward Mark when she laughed. Her hand brushed his knee. She didn't pull it away immediately. I noticed, and for the first time, my stomach dropped. I didn't say anything, because saying something would mean doubting them, and I didn't know how to live in a world where I doubted both. Later that night, after Mark left, I asked her casually if something was going on. She looked surprised, almost offended. "No, why would you ask that?" I apologized. "That was my mistake." From then on, I started noticing everything. The way they looked at each other, the way my wife smiled when his name appeared on her phone, the way Mark avoided being alone with me. Suspicion doesn't arrive suddenly. It creeps. I checked her phone one night while she was in the shower. I hated myself for it. I didn't find explicit messages, no confessions, no plans, just familiarity, inside jokes, late replies, emotional closeness. Enough. That night, I couldn't sleep, because the worst part wasn't the possibility that they were cheating. It was the realization that they were already connected in a way I wasn't part of anymore. I confronted Mark the next day, not aggressively, quietly. I asked him if something was going on. He looked shocked, then hurt, then angry. He said I was imagining things, that I was insecure, that he'd never do that to me. I believed him. Again, I went home and apologized to my wife. Again, she accepted it, too easily. Somewhere deep inside, I knew. But knowing something and accepting it are very different things. After that night, I stopped sleeping properly. Not because I was angry, because my mind wouldn't rest. Once suspicion enters your life, it doesn't stay quiet. It starts connecting dots you ignored before. It replays moments you brushed off. It rewrites memories in a language you wish you didn't understand. And suddenly, everything makes sense. I started paying attention, not in an obsessive way, in a careful one. I noticed how my wife angled her phone away from me when she texted. How she'd smile softly at messages and then quickly lock the screen. How she'd leave the room to answer calls she used to take right next to me. None of it proved anything. But together, it painted a picture I didn't want to see. Mark stopped coming over. At least, when I was home. My wife started going out more, running errands, meeting friends, clearing her head. She never said Mark's name. That absence said enough. One afternoon, I left work early. No reason, just a feeling. I didn't text her. I wanted to surprise her. That used to be something she loved. When I pulled into the driveway, Mark's car was already there. My hands stayed on the steering wheel longer than necessary. I told myself there was an explanation. There's always an explanation until there isn't. I walked inside quietly. Their voices came from the kitchen. They were laughing. Not the casual kind, the kind that comes from comfort, from familiarity, from something shared. I stepped into the doorway. They didn't notice me right away. She was standing close to him. Too close. Her hand rested on his arm in a way I had seen 1,000 times before. Just not with him. They froze when they saw me. The room felt suddenly smaller. "Hey," Mark said. My wife pulled her hand back immediately. Too immediately. I nodded. Didn't ask questions. Didn't accuse. I wasn't ready yet. They left soon after. Together. In separate cars. I sat alone at the kitchen table long after they were gone. That was the moment I knew. Not suspected. Knew. I didn't confront her that night. I watched her instead. Watched how she avoided my eyes. How she spoke too carefully. How she touched me less, like her body had already learned new boundaries. It wasn't anger I felt. It was grief. Over the next few days, I did something I never thought I would do. I became careful. I checked phone records. Not messages. Just timing. Late night calls. Long ones. Always the same number. Mark's. I confronted him again. This time, I didn't ask. I told him what I knew. He didn't deny it immediately. That pause lasted half a second. It was enough. He said nothing was happening. That they were just talking. That I was reading too much into things. He looked me in the eye and said, "I would never hurt you like that." That sentence still makes my chest tighten. Because you already had. I went home and asked my wife directly. No casual tone. No jokes. No apologies. I asked her if she was in love with my best friend. She stared at me for a long time. And then she cried. That was her answer. She didn't confess right away. She said it was complicated. That it just happened. That they didn't mean for it to go that far. She said she was confused. I listened. I didn't interrupt. Because every word felt like another piece of something breaking inside me. Eventually, she admitted I'd crossed a line. Not physically at first. Emotionally. Then later, physically. She said it like she was reading a report. Detached. Careful. Afraid. I asked her how long. She told me a number that felt unreal. Months. Not days, not weeks, months. I asked her why. She said she felt understood by him, seen, comforted. She said I had changed, that I wasn't present, that I was distant. I recognized the words. They were the same ones I had once used with Mark. That realization hurt more than the affair itself. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I sat there, numb, listening to my life being redefined. She said she never meant to hurt me. That sentence almost made me laugh. The worst part wasn't imagining them together. It was realizing how many moments they had shared while I trusted them both completely. Every dinner, every conversation, every smile I didn't question. All of it was contaminated now. I asked her if she loved him. She hesitated. That hesitation destroyed whatever was left. That night, she slept in the guest room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying years of friendship and marriage in a new light. I wondered how long I had been the only one who didn't know. The next day, Mark texted me. He said he was sorry, that he never meant for it to happen, that he hoped we could talk. I didn't reply. Some conversations don't deserve words. I realized then that I had lost 2 relationships at once, not gradually, instantly. One moment I had a wife and a best friend. The next, I had memories and questions. Trust doesn't shatter loudly. It collapses inward, quietly, leaving nothing solid to stand on. The house felt unfamiliar after that. Not empty, unfamiliar. Like a place I had lived in for years that suddenly belonged to someone else. She moved through the rooms carefully, as if noise itself could hurt me. She avoided my eyes, spoke only when necessary. Her guilt was quiet, controlled. That somehow made it worse. We talked the next day, not about fixing things, about facts. She told me everything, or at least everything she thought I deserved to know. How it started with conversations, how Mark listened when she felt lonely, how she didn't plan for it to happen, how one night turned into many. She said my name when she cried. I hated that. I asked her if she loved him. She didn't answer right away. That pause was the final confirmation I needed. I don't know, she said. That was worse than yes. I asked if she still loved me. She said she cared about me deeply. That was when I understood the marriage was already over. Love doesn't hesitate like that. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I didn't try to compete with someone who already knew my weaknesses better than anyone else. I told her I needed space. She nodded, like she had expected it. Mark tried to reach out again. Calls, messages, apologies that felt carefully written. He said he wanted to explain. Explain what? How he listened to my marriage fall apart and stepped into the silence. How he smiled at my wedding and slept with my wife years later. Some betrayals don't deserve dialogue. I blocked his number, not out of anger, out of necessity. I couldn't heal while hearing his voice. My wife asked you if we could try counseling. She said people make mistakes. She said relationships survive worse. I believed her, but survival isn't the same as living. Trust changes shape when it breaks. It doesn't disappear. It becomes suspicion. Every late text, every delayed reply, every change in tone. Love under surveillance is not love. It's fear. I moved out 2 weeks later, packed what I needed, left what I didn't. She stood in the doorway while I carried boxes to the car. She cried. I didn't. I had already done my crying alone at night. Friends started asking questions. Some knew parts of the truth. Most didn't. I didn't correct them when they assumed it was mutual. It was easier than explaining that the 2 people I trusted most had chosen each other over me. Mark lost his job shortly after, not because of the affair, because people talk, because trust matters in places you don't expect. I felt nothing when I heard. No satisfaction, no relief, just distance. I started over. New apartment, new routines, long evenings with nothing to distract me. The silence was brutal at first. Then it became honest. People say time heals betrayal. That's not entirely true. Time teaches you how to live with it. I still think about the signs I ignored, the moments I laughed off, the times I defended them without knowing why. I don't blame myself anymore. Trusting the people you love is not a flaw. I ran into my ex-wife once, months later, by accident. She looked tired, older. We exchanged polite words, nothing meaningful. She asked how I was doing. I said I was okay. That was the truth. She didn't mention Mark. I didn't ask. Some stories end better when they stay closed. I don't hate them. That surprises people when I say it. Hatred requires energy. I needed mine to rebuild. The hardest part wasn't losing my wife. It was losing my best friend at the same time. Losing the shared history, the inside jokes, the person I would have called first. Grief multiplies when betrayal comes from two directions. I don't believe everyone cheats. I don't believe every friendship is dangerous. But I do believe boundaries matter more than people admit, especially when comfort replaces honesty. If you're listening to this and you're close to someone who isn't yours, ask yourself a simple question. Would you say these things in front of your partner? If not, you already know the answer. I survived losing both of them. Not because I was strong, because there was no other option. Some endings choose you. I rebuilt my life quietly, with fewer people, stronger walls, clearer boundaries. I trust again, but differently. This isn't a story about revenge, or justice, or closure. It's a story about what happens when loyalty collapses from the inside, when the safest people become strangers. I don't tell this story to warn you about love. I tell it to remind you that betrayal rarely comes from enemies. It comes from those closest to you. And when it does, the only thing left is how you choose to live after.